with the latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Coming up, we'll have half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's show, China-Central Asia cooperation and development are major themes at an important summit in Kazakhstan. And China's central bank announces 8 major financial policies at the Lujiazui Forum in Shanghai. And now let's begin with our top story. The second China-Central Asia summit has taken place in Kazakhstan. Chinese President Xi Jinping attended and addressed the summit in Astana. He has laid out a vision for cooperation between China and Central Asia, calling for unity, win-win development, and deeper people-to-people ties. He also outlined plans to promote regional prosperity, security, and integration. Leaders of the 5 Central Asian countries expressed a desire to deepen the cooperation with China. They voiced commitment to expanding trade and investment and advancing Belt and Road cooperation. President Xi Jinping and the leaders of the 5 Central Asian countries signed the Astana Declaration at the summit. So for more on this, join us on the line now are Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. So Yan, I will start with you. Chinese President Xi Jinping attended the summit in Astana. He delivered a keynote speech, and he also had meetings with the heads of the state at this gathering, and several documents have been signed. So could you tell us more about the details and why is this region so important for China when it comes to building economic and strategic ties?
Right. Well, so first of all, I think this region is very important. It has a strategic and also symbolic significance, especially at this time. And so I think, Central Asia has always been strategic for China. So first of all, China shares borders with 3 Central Asian countries, right? Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and also Tajikistan. So by sharing borders with these countries, I think that's why stability and security of these very close neighbors are really imperative to China. And that's why I think China, see this region very important as, it's a very sort of a strategic bulwark to ensure stability and security. And second is that this region is a critical land bridge to South Asia, Middle East, and also Europe. They're really sitting at the crossroad, right, of the new Silk Road, of the Belt Road Initiative. So it has a very strategic, locations when it comes to trade, investment, infrastructure connectivity. And last but not least, I think there are vast economic opportunities. For example, as I earlier mentioned, trade and investment, especially in energies and also critical minerals. And so that's why I think, this region is important for security reasons, for, trade, investment, economic cooperation, and so on and so forth. And so that's why I think, it's important to understand the visit and also the declaration and all the deals that have been making in this summit.
And President Xi Jinping noted how cooperation between China and the Central Asian nations has deepened through the Belt and Road Initiative. And if we take a look at the figure here, the trade has increased by 35%. So Dr. Zhou Mi, how significant is this summit for these 5 countries? And they all have pretty comprehensive links with China, right?
Yes, I think that, the cooperation between the Central Asia and China has been a very long history. But, just when we are trying to improve the level of cooperation to the leaders level, for the summit, it's the second time. So it's a really important thing that, both the 2 sides actually want to know what the governments, especially the leaders, want to give the message to the market. Yes, as you mentioned, there are so many kind of things to do with trade, because all of these Central Asian countries, they have their very special characteristics and resources, and they have their own designs. Like for Kazakhstan, they want to try to develop their, plans. For the future development as the road of the brightness. I think that is also our kind of a very similar principles or ideas compared with the Belt and Road Initiative. So for the summit, I think that leaders are trying to give the message to the market that you can do more to collaborate in the different ways. As we know that Central Asia is one of the the very special areas in the world because Eurasia continent is the biggest in the world. So the Central Asia, it may be the farthest to the ocean. So compared with our experiences in the past decades, the trade on the oceans are mostly familiar with many trading partners. So if are trying to do more to connect with the international market, they have to find out what they can do to improve their better connections with the main market, like with China and also with EU or even with other markets. So this summit is really giving there some kind of plans or some kind of the routes that they can follow to try to improve that. And I think that is really interesting that we can do more to improve the cooperation from the from the top down directions, and also giving some information to the market that they can try to believe each other more and trying to explore some of the most kind of different opportunities among our trade cooperations.
And Dr. Zhou Mi, so in his speech, President Xi Jinping noted areas of cooperation between China and the Central Asian nations, like industrial investment and green mining. And we also know that more Chinese new energy vehicles, or NEVs, are now entering the market in Central Asia. So what's your assessment of the two-way trade?
Well, it is true that for some of these Central Asian countries, they really are having plenty of resources, especially for the kind of the fossil fuels. But compared with what they really want from the development or transmissions from the traditional energies to the new energy, they really want to know more about the possible ways of development. China's NEVs are really kind of leading the world in the different ways, like for the efficiencies, like for the the manufacturing process, and also better use of the technology. So they are attractive for so many consumers around the world. For many of the Central Asian countries, I mean, for those consumers, they also want to have that. Well, from China's side, I think that for Chinese companies, they want to get more supply of these energies from different parts of the world, and Central Asia is definitely one of the very important choices. But compared with the traditional ways of mining, I think many Chinese companies are really get more energy or understanding about how can do everything with more environmentally protective ways of doing businesses. So the green mining is a really kind of examples that we want to let the people of those countries to make better use of the resources without destroying the environment or have less impact on the environment. So I think this kind of exchange of the experience are really important for both sides. They can benefit from this cooperation.
So this time 12 cooperation agreements regarding the Belt and Road cooperation, personal exchanges, green mining, trade, connectivity, and more have been signed. So what are the highlights of these agreements?
So I think the highlights are, first of all, as you mentioned earlier, that there has been a lot of trade between the two parts, especially when it comes to the complementary economic structure. So China mainly exports machineries, electronics, and consumer goods to Central Asian countries and import energies, minerals, metals, and agricultural products from these countries. So I think on trade, there has been really the collaboration and trying to reduce tariffs, streamline the customs procedures, and lower non-tariff trade barriers. And so that, I think, is on the trade front, that there's more agreements to have digital trade, to have more trading areas. And for second is, I think, investments. As we know, China has cumulative $15 billion investments in this area. And I think there is the plan to continue with infrastructure investments. For example, the China-Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan railway project has officially been launched in 2024. And now they're planning for the third railway link between China and Kazakhstan. There's also the highway projects with China and Tajikistan, and there's also the China-Turkmenistan's energy cooperation. So all of these involved some kinds of investment projects, and especially when it comes to infrastructure. So I think that is another highlight that we're likely to see more infrastructure construction to improve the connectivities, and also I think the industrial capacities in these 5 Central Asian countries. And you mentioned earlier in terms of the EVs, that we know that China's EVs are very popular in the Central Asia, not only because the quality is high, but also it's relatively cheap for the Chinese competitive, pricing for these EVs. And the Central Asian countries are really having a lot of government support. They're building the infrastructure, and they're trying to really accelerate their EV adoptions. So I think that is another area where, Chinese automakers are thinking about localizing their EV production in Central Asia. So I think that it's another, green investment in the EV manufacturer, and accelerates in production in Central Asia countries. And so I think that it's a very important and another major, I think, cooperation areas. And last but not the least, I think when it comes to the green energy, sustainable development, China has a lot to offer. And I think, China has already helped to build the solar plant in Uzbekistan, and also in Kazakhstan. China has helped to build wind and hydro projects. So I think it's likely to see more this kinds of green energy utility investments from China to Central Asian countries. So I think all of these, when it comes to trade, investment, infrastructure, technological exchanges, and as you mentioned, educational, people-to-people exchanges, I think all of these will likely to accelerate in the coming years.
And Dr. Zhou Mi, so as Yan mentioned, China is very closely involved in the infrastructure development in these countries. So how important is this for the region? And how involved will China be in the future in the infrastructure development?
Well, as we all know that China is a very good practitioner of this infrastructure development, and we benefit a lot in these regions. So last month I just came from the Macau, and there was a very important summit. That is a kind of a summit to discuss about the infrastructure cooperation. There are so many Chinese companies that are really good at doing different kind of the infrastructure, including the traditional ways of the roads, the rails, and the airports or other ports. And some of the infrastructure manufacturers are trying to do more to improve the abilities in the telecommunications or something to do with energy transmissions. So for these kind of areas, China also have a very good companies to do these kind of jobs. And second, I think that China is good at the experiences on managing all these projects, especially the super large projects. We know that for Central Asian countries, they have many kind of very different resources. Like if you are looking at Kyrgyzstan, they have a very different energy resources distribution in this country. So north there are many energies, but in the south part they have very less energies. So Chinese companies are already involved in this kind of projects. They have the experience of managing these projects in a very efficient way. And the third one, I think that also it is true that Chinese companies are trying to learn from our partners in the countries, including the Central Asian areas. They are trying to know more about how can we deal with the projects in the different weather conditions and the human resources conditions, and also something to do with logistics. So they are not only about the infrastructure, they are coming also or accompanied by some of the solutions like from software for kind of improvement like the smart cities, like the artificial intelligence in the auto driving, and there are many more possibilities. So it's not only limited in the infrastructure areas, but they are a package of the cooperations by both sides.
And Dr. Zhou Mi, so how can the Central Asia countries use the summit and the current trade opportunities to boost its industrial capacity and grow its value chains?
Well, it's a really important question because for many countries, they want to improve their, levels in the global value chain. I think that they can try to get more information from China's side. Maybe, there are also many Chinese companies went to the Central Asia Summit, so they can have more interactions face to face, and they will know more about China's demand from our side. And the second is, I think that are also a boosting for the connections. I mean, the flights. We have set up some new flights directly from Beijing to some of the Central Asian countries, and the logistics will become easier. So they can come here to China to look at the situation by themselves, and they can also try to export more things to China because we have the China International Import Expos and also the supply chains expos. So we have many kind of opportunities to let them to show what they are capable of, and they can do more with Chinese people.
And so, Yan, so how deeply is China involved in the green energy transition in Central Asia?
Well, I think China is deeply involved. As I mentioned earlier, China helped to build the solar farms and also hydropowers in some of these Central Asian economies. I think Dr. Zhou Mi just mentioned that some of these Central Asian countries, they do have rich fossil fuel resources. But still, I think these countries are determined to move towards more sustainable growth and to be able to make this green transition towards the renewable energies. And so China has the expertise in transfer some of these green energy technologies to these various countries. China also exports, as we earlier mentioned, EVs and solar panels and the hydro power facilities. And all of these, I think, will be helpful to provide a hardware for these countries to improve their energy sources. And last but not the least, I think, again, with China's investments in these countries, they're able to build more. I think this kinds of solar farms, hydropowers, and so on. And so I think China, in this case, is greatly helpful in all three fronts in terms of technological transfer, in terms of trade exports of these renewable energy facilities, but also help to construct and finance some of these energy projects. And so I think that's really the very unique role that China can play in this region.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, and Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. And after a short break, China's central bank announced 8 major financial policies at the Lujiazui Forum in Shanghai. And join us for the discussion is also Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novim Aki Technologies. Stay with us.
Welcome. I'm Elaf Elad, economics professor and member of the Data Science and AI Center at New York University, Shanghai. On the World Today program, you can find in-depth and impartial insight, as well as critical commentary on key trends in the Chinese economy, financial technology, business, and blockchain. To prepare for the world tomorrow, join me on World Today.
Hi, I'm Einar Tangen, a political and economic analyst and senior fellow at the independent Taihe Institute. World Today is news without the hype and business commentary that is informed and up to date, presenting the facts and asking incisive questions. So, join us if you are someone who needs to know what is happening in China as it is happening.
You're listening to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. The Lujiazui Forum in Shanghai gathered officials, regulators, financial leaders, and renowned economists. The 2-day event focused on financial opening up and development in a changing global economy. At the opening ceremony, China's central bank Governor Pan Gongsheng introduced 8 measures to further open the financial markets. The measures include establishing an interbank market transaction reporting system and the Digital Yuan International Operations Center. So first, Yan, so what do you think of the central bank's 8 policies, and what's the signal do they send to the market?
Well, I think the emphasis of these 8 measures are really trying to promote the digital currency, the digital yuan, and the blockchain technology, green finance, but also more financial opening, especially to establish the offshore, financing channels for, trade for export-oriented companies. So I think all of these show that China is determined to continue to deepen its financial reform to have the high quality opening in terms of the financial sectors. Again, they're trying to do this in a very careful way because the idea is to set up, for example, the pilot programs and also some of the experimental kind of free trade zones, and also to optimize some of these already existing free trade account functions. So it's doing in such a way that it's going to be cautious and gradual. The trend is that China is going to continue to open up to deepen its financial reforms, but also really align these financial reforms with technological advancements and also sustainable development goals. So it's clear that security is important, financial security is important. It's only based on that, very clear goal of ensuring financial security that China is going to open up and trying to promote more technological advancements in the financial sector.
So Jiahe, the country will build an international operations center for digital yuan. So what exactly does that involve?
Well, that basically, when we talk about digital yuan, especially digital yuan and the global market, that involves many things. For example, first of all, you need the infrastructure and the digital center for calculating the transferring of these digital yuan. You need to introduce it to many consumers who got used to be trading with the banks rather than the digital yuan themselves. And this also shows that China's financial market is more open to the global market, which is a trend that has been going in the past decade. We see the financial market, including the currency that is yuan, also other things like stocks, fixed income, these kind of, even the property market are opened wider and wider to the global market. And the digital yuan, the introduction of digital yuan to the global market is also a part of this whole program, which, alongside China's opening of the real economy to the global market, China is also opening many parts of its financial market to the global market as well.
And Jiahe, so the forum also discussed some new tools for innovating the monetary policy, such as blockchain, refinancing, and the issuance of technology and innovation bonds. So what do all this tell us about how China uses the policy to steer the capital towards innovation?
Yeah, you're asking a very important question. That is, why do you develop finance, and why do you develop many new and creative methods of finance? Because finance is something really different from the real economy. In real economy, you have new technology, you have new invention. It is always something that is improving the productivity of the society. At least it provides you with one more choice. But if you look at finance, finance is a very interesting area. The creation of financial tools alone does not really necessarily bring good benefits to the society, because finance is ultimately serving the real economy. I mean, you can't eat money, you can't wear money. Money is something that helps you to get things that you use every day, you consume every day. But money alone really doesn't help people's lives at all. I mean, for example, I always say, if you add a zero to all the wealth that everyone is owning, then you don't increase the well-being of the society at all. Although everyone gets 10 times more money, but it doesn't mean anything. So the real purpose of finance is serving the real economy and helping the real economy to grow so as to improve the livelihood of people. So this comes over to the creation of financial products, financial system, all these kind of financial tools, all these kind of things, is that you make creation only in the purpose of better serving the real economy. So that's why we need the financial authorities to regulate this. That is, if a creative method is wonderful for the economy, then we definitely do that. But if a creative method is not really helping the real economy, but becoming a speculative tool, such as what happened back in the 2008 global financial crisis, where you see so many financial derivatives that finally together they destroyed the whole economy, then that's something the financial regulators would step in to stop them. So this is a very complicated thing regarding whether you need a creative tool and a creative method with the financial markets. That's why we need the financial authorities to, well evaluate these kind of things.
And Dr. Zhou Mi, so an action plan between Shanghai and Hong Kong aims to promote the coordinated development of the two international financial hubs and boost the market connectivity. So could you tell us more about that?
Well, I think that for these two centers, they are really important in China because they are playing different roles. Like for Shanghai, they are the centers for the Yangtze, the lower Yangtze River Delta. The cooperation are mainly based on the manufacturing and somehow something to do with electronics, and they are really good at some of the areas like the shipbuildings or the electronics. While for the Hong Kong, it's a different way because it's more internationalized and it have a more free systems, free flow of the capitals, and also a lot of people coming from all over the world. So they are doing some business to supporting the Great Bay Area's cooperation in the Zhejiang, the four river deltas. So they are playing different roles. But for both of these areas, I mean, they have some kind of advantages. So the connections between these two centers are really bridging the resources in different ways, and they are really trying to give the both sides more ideas on how can they improve their capacities in dealing with such kind of a complicated situation. So I think this message, this mechanism is trying to give some support for both sides to trying to do more on the domestically integrations market and also the communications of the messages and trying to improve their abilities on dealing with the uncertainties in the world.
Well, we're speaking with Dr. Zhou Mi at the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Architechnologies, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. And that's all the time for this edition of Biz Today. To listen to this episode again or to find more previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching for Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening.